City right now, and we're going down as a family today. We haven't talked a lot about this, but it seems like Miyako is probably going to be the place we're going to wind up coming in 2018. So it's kind of some exciting news we got to share. It looks like our church is, they're in the process of considering this. They haven't made the final decision yet, but it looks like they're going to consider planting a new church in Miyako. And so we've been kind of asked to pray about it and consider it. And after doing so, we've decided to commit to going for 2 years, starting in 2018, to work alongside another missionary from our church, Catherine Porter, and we'll be working together to, hopefully lay the groundwork for a church, but with the long-term goal of sticking through to the end of the church plant, whenever that may be. But we've committed to go for 2 years first to sort of see how the work's going to go. We've never really done much ministry ourselves in Miyako, but Kat and many others from the 311 network and the Singapore teams that have been coming through have all been working down there pretty diligently. So we're going down there today on sort of a little vision trip, and since I'm driving, I'm gonna turn this over to Tomo and let her talk a little bit more. I might shoot some questions and stuff at her, but yeah, thanks for coming along with us, and hopefully we'll show you a little bit about what God's doing in our lives, and maybe give you a little view of Miyako City as well as we get down there. So thanks for tagging along.
So Miyako is one of the biggest cities on the Iwate coast. It has about 60,000 people in it, but there's only 2 Protestant churches, and it was also the first city our church visited right after the tsunami 6 years ago to see what the needs were. And they immediately started distributing supplies, cleaning out mud out of houses, playing with children, just doing whatever they could to meet the people's needs. And ever since then, there's been a constant flow of Christian workers and volunteers going into this town, trying to meet the survivors' needs there. And one of those workers was Kat, who suggested that maybe it's time for our church to start a church plant there. She's been living in Miyako for the past 5 or 6 years doing disaster relief or survivor care type ministries, and she felt that that type of work was coming to an end. The city is officially closing down all the temporary housing parks this summer, so the needs are changing quickly right now. She met lots of people there through the post-disaster ministries, and she really wanted to see a stable church presence there to continue to reach out to these people and see them come to Christ. So she said, hey, I want to plant a church there, but I can't do it alone. I need a team to do it with. So we started praying about joining her, but we'd actually never even considered Miyako until 6 or so months ago when she came forward with the idea. We had been looking at different cities and other opportunities, but it seemed like God was somehow keeping those other doors shut. And then quite out of the blue, she came to us with this proposal, and we felt like God opened this door that we didn't even know existed. So anyways, this is a pretty recent development, and I've never even been to the city, so we really don't know much about it. So this is going to be our first impression kind of a trip. So we'll be driving around town, making several stops. We want to know, what does the city look like? Where do people live? What's going on right now, 6 years after the tsunami? What are the needs there? What parts of town are maybe good to start our church plant in? What kind of housing is available? What are our options for kids' schools? Just a lot of stuff like that. We have lots of questions.
So our first visit as we go into the city is to meet with a Christian lady who lives in Miyako City, and her house was heavily damaged by a typhoon about a year ago. And so she's actually been living in temporary housing, the same kind of temporary housing that the survivors from the tsunami 6 years ago are living in. She had to move into temporary housing due to the typhoon last year. Her house was so heavily damaged by the typhoon that she's going to have to have it torn down and rebuilt completely. And so in the meantime, she found a place to live for 1 year, another house in the city. And she mentioned that it might be possible, after she's done living in that temporary house that she found, that she could talk to the landlord and see if we could move into it. And so we're going to go and meet with her, and she's going to show us that house that she's moving into and see if it looks like it might be something that we could move into that would work for the sort of ministry activities that we have in mind. And so we're excited to go and check that out. We were told that finding housing in Miyako could be very difficult right now. There's many people who are living in temporary housing because of the typhoon and because of the tsunami, and they don't have places to live, and they're looking to move out, and so there's a high demand for housing. In addition to that, there's many construction workers who are living in Miyako short term to help with rebuilding or building new roads that are being put in up in that area. And so we were told it's a very hard time to find housing. We were sort of concerned that we might have a difficult time finding a place. And so that's one of the things we've really been praying about and wondering that the type of place we'd be able to live. Yeah, that was one of our biggest concerns, was that we wouldn't be able to find a place in Miyako within the time frame that we were going. So yesterday when we heard about this idea of this house, we were really surprised and really wondering what the place would be like, if it was going to be really run down or need a lot of repair, or if it would suit our needs. It was just really kind of a surprise to hear about it out of the blue like that. So we're taking a look at it, and our initial impression is it looks bigger than we thought it might be. The rent is extremely reasonable. It's definitely within our price range. And as we started walking through the house, we noticed that on the first floor, there's these two huge rooms that actually you could take the doors out and make it one giant room. And we were thinking as we're going through, wow, this would be just the perfect place to be able to have like events and meeting things. We've been doing this English cafe at our church in Morioka, and we could definitely host it in the room there if we wanted to try that. We began to think, even if we took these doors out, if it got to the point where we were doing like a house church or something, this would totally be large enough to host a small congregation. And we're probably getting way ahead of ourselves at this point. But we looked outside and we thought, oh, well, there's not a lot of parking either, so that might be a problem. But then we looked out the top window of the second floor, and we saw there's this giant parking lot right behind the house that's not in use anymore. There used to be a preschool nearby, but the preschool moved, and so the preschool is now just a vacant lot, and next to the vacant lot there's this big parking lot. So we have no idea how this is all going to play out in the future, but we were really excited to kind of start thinking through the possibilities and seeing that, there's a lot of ways that this place would just fit in so perfectly with the kinds of ministry that we're hoping to be doing over the next 2 years in Miyako City. So we're really praying that if this is God's will, that He will work things out, that we can rent the place, and that the landlord will be okay in letting us move in after this friend of ours is done with the place and she moves back into her rebuilt home. So that's definitely something to be praying for. The next stop on our trip was to go and visit a real estate agent to, again, find out more about the housing, because that was our biggest concern. And if it didn't work out that we weren't able to rent this place, we wanted to find out what other options we might have. And so I took Tomo to the real estate office and dropped her off there so that she could talk. And in the meantime, I took the kids over to the mall that they have in Miyako. It's kind of a small mall, but we went and spent some time there looking around just some of the shops and things, and just had a good time with the kids, and they really enjoyed it, had fun. And so we wanted to see how the kids felt about the city too, and it seemed like a nice place for them too.
So the real estate agent was very helpful and was able to answer a lot of my questions. I found out that what we heard about finding housing in Miyako being very difficult right now was indeed true. She said there's a very few houses on the market right now, and with everybody having to move out of temporary housings this year, it could take months to find suitable housing. We're coming back to the States on home service in a couple of months and won't be back to Japan till the end of March next year at the earliest. And March is actually the busiest moving season in Japan because schools and businesses start their year in April, so lots of people move in March. So she said if you want to start living in Miyako in April, we will need to submit applications with all the real estate offices in town around February, and then if you're lucky, we may be able to find a place by April. Anyway, so she also showed me 3 areas on the map. One is on the south side by the ocean, and this is the part of town that was swept away by the tsunami and was completely leveled. It's mostly been rebuilt, but this area is still on high alert, and everyone has to evacuate every time there's a medium-sized earthquake. And there's still a lot of aftershocks going on, and they have to evacuate pretty often, even if it's in the middle of the night. So she strongly recommended not living there with little kids if we have a choice. And I asked about one of the 4 preschools in town that's in that area by the port, and she told me that lots of people died trying to pick up their kids from schools in that area because there's only one main road that goes to that part of town, and the road is right by the ocean, so they were just swallowed whole by the water, car and everything. The second part was kind of the downtown or the main part of the city where most shops and doctors and things are. The house we looked at earlier is actually located in this area, and she said everyone wants to live there because it's safe from tsunamis and flooding from the river and has lots of shops and offices. But because it's such a popular area, finding a house there is really hard. So it's pretty cool that our friend was able to find that house there. And then the third part is further away from the ocean, more towards the mountains, and this is where she said a lot of new houses and apartments are being built because people are afraid to live close to the waters after what happened. So lots of families have moved there, and it's a quickly growing area. So this might be a good place to have church gatherings and outreaches and stuff like that maybe.
The last part of our trip, we wanted to drive down through the port section of the city that was near the ocean and see that area where the tsunami had hit. And it was a very sobering experience to drive through that part of town and to see all the signs saying, oh, the tsunami had come up this high and it had buried the houses up to, so many meters high in water. We drove past an inn that had been heavily damaged by the tsunami that my brother had actually come on a trip right afterwards, and he had helped board up that inn. And that innkeeper, because of that contact, started getting to know some of the other Christians who were working in the area and some of the 311 staff members. And he's since become a Christian, and now he helps out with a lot of the ministry that's going on here in Miyako City. And so it was exciting. We drove past his inn and saw that. We also saw the giant seawall that they're building in that area of the town to try and protect against future tsunamis and to drive around that. And it was just a massive wall. And again, just sort of almost a scary experience thinking about how terrifying it must have been during that time when the waters swept through. But then again, we remembered it's because of that disaster that so many Christians recognized that there was a need in this area, and they came to help with the relief work and to minister to the physical needs of the people. And it was just an amazing testimony that they could come and help in that time of need. But the interesting thing was that the Christians continued to stay. They recognized that there were emotional needs as well, and so they stayed to just talk and to share and to let them, the survivors, have that opportunity to talk to others about their experiences and their loss and their grief. And through that, we began to see as believers in this area, that there were spiritual needs as well. We realized and remembered that this was a town that prior to the tsunami had very little Christian influence. It was a town that was made up overwhelmingly of people who had never heard the gospel, made up of people who had no relationship with their Creator. And really it was to come and to help towns like this, to help bring the gospel and to help start churches, and that we came to this part of Japan in the first place. And so it's been so exciting to see the doors opening for a church plant to happen in this area. And so we can't wait to get down here and to see what God's going to be doing. We're excited at the possibility of continuing to work with our church in Morioka. It just seems like a perfect continuation of the ministry that we've been doing in Morioka, and then connecting that with what our hope and what we really felt God was sending us here to do in the first place, which was to be involved in supporting and establishing new churches in the coastal cities. So this has been just a great little day trip, our first sort of experience looking at this city with new eyes as a potential place to go and to live and work. And we're really excited that God is opening the door for us to come here. So we just ask for your prayers and continued support as we prepare for this next phase of ministry. And yeah, we just love that we can continue working with Morioka Bible Baptist Church, with the 311 Church Network, and that God is really moving these ministries that started with, helping people shovel mud out of their houses, and now it's gone to the point where new churches are being established and started, and new people are coming to know Christ. So it's just been an amazing 6 years in this area to see the ways that God's work. And we've only been here for 4 years, but it's been even an amazing 4 years for us to see that progress and to see God working, and to see the ways that He's been preparing us to be involved in that work. So we thank you again for all of your prayers, and just ask that you keep praying. We're going to be coming back to the States in a few months here, and we can't wait to share about all these opportunities in person. So hopefully we'll see many of you soon.